Hi and welcome to WEH Videos. My name is Skip and this is the updated version of Part 2 on my series VFR Flight Planning, the Navigation Log. So we planned our course from Colusa to Arbuckle to this intersection between Highway 5 and 505 down to Watts Woodland, Oscar 41. Then the next checkpoint would be University EDU, where we will make a turn and go to Sacramento Exec. So now we need to get the distances for each leg, and then we want to determine the altitude to fly for each leg. So to get to the distances, we're going to use the plotter. And this is the one we used in the first video, remember, when we determined the course headings and everything. But I think for this video, we're going to use the plotter that comes with the E6B. So let's just take this apart. And you'll see here, it says sectional chart. And we have 0 to 5 miles, 10, 15, 20 nautical miles. This does say nautical miles. So all we have to do is line up our course with the plotter here. So let's just go ahead and put the 0 on Arbuckle and go up to Colusa, our airport. And it looks like 10 miles. So let's write that down. Well, eventually we'll put this in our flight plan. Now let's do the next leg. Rotate this around. We have the intersection of 505 and 5. And we look at that, and it's right here. That looks like 13 miles. So we're going to write that down, 13 miles. Then from the intersection down to Watts, wow, look at that, almost a perfect 10 miles. And from Watts to EDU, looks like 9 miles, 9.5 miles, we'll call it 9.5 miles. And then from EDU to Sac Exec, 14 miles. Okay, we have our miles. All right, now let's get our altitude for each leg. Now, are there rules that we have to follow here with altitude? We can't just take off and fly at any altitude we want. So let's just take a look at these VFR cruise altitudes. So when operating below 18,000 feet MSL, mean sea level, and above 3,000 feet AGL, above ground level, if we are flying a heading between 0 and 179 degrees, we can fly at any odd thousands MSL plus 500. So if we have to be above 3,000 feet for this to be in effect. So basically we're looking at 3,500, 5,500, and so on. If we are flying on a heading of 180 to 359 degrees, any even 1,000 feet MSL plus 500 would work. So that would be 4,500, 6,500, and so on. So we need to keep these in mind when we are determining the altitude that we want to fly. So to help us choose an altitude, we have some tools here that right off the bat can really help us. Notice this number right here. Well, what is that number? Well, let's just get the sectional chart out and take a look. And here we have that number, 12 with a small 5. What is that? Well, this chart contains maximum elevation figures, MEF. And what that does is it tells us the highest obstacle in that quadrant. And what do I mean by that? Well, you take longitude and latitudinal lines right here, and it makes a little box right there. Okay, there's one number in that box. So the highest obstacle in this area is 3,500 feet. And over here in this quadrant here, we have 800 feet. And then up here we have 3,900 and 2,500. So we can kind of get an idea right away that we don't really have to worry about too much. The only place it's going to give us any kind of trouble at all, if possible, would be over here in the mountain ranges here where we have 3,500. But that's way, way out of our way, and we're not going to go anywhere near that. But that's a lot of area to cover here. So let's narrow it down to where we want to look. And a little tool that you can use is to get your plotter and get 10 nautical miles and put the 5 in the middle. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to come along and we're going to look at 5 miles on either side of our course. If we get beyond that, if we get out here, maybe we ought to be taking a bus instead of flying an airplane. So now let's just take this and slide it down, and we're just going to look for things as we go in this little area, things that we might want to be concerned about. And there's really nothing as we come along on our flight that's really going to stand out. Well, we do have one obstacle right here, right? Well, let's just take a look at that and see what that is. Okay, well, that's an obstacle, and the top number is a number that is above mean sea level, and the number below it is above ground level. So does that have a number on it? Let's just take a look. Yes, this is 457 feet above sea level, and it's 200, I can't read that, and 84 feet above the ground level. That's not really going to be a problem, but that's something to think about. There's also a couple over here at the 5 mile mark, not really a problem for us at 337 feet above sea level. So let's just keep coming down. Well, now here's something we want to be concerned about, though. They got parachutists in here, so there could be some activity we need to watch out for. A couple of more of those obstacles, but really nothing serious. And we come across this way. We've got one down here we need to pay attention to. 241 feet, not a problem. And we keep coming. Now here's some right in our flight path. So we kind of want to know what they are. And they're 312 feet MSL, so that's not a problem. So it's looking really good. So we're really close to getting our altitudes here. So even though our first leg here is on the 180 to 359er heading and requires an even thousands plus 500s, we're climbing out here. So that doesn't really count for our altitude that we wanted to determine, because remember, these are cruise altitudes. And at this point, we are still climbing. So what we want to concern ourselves with is the altitudes for the rest of the flight. So realistically, from Arbuckle all the way to Sac Exec, we only have two options, in my opinion, 3,500 and 5,500. These are odd thousands, and they'll work really well. We could fly at 3,500, and that would be no problem. It's a very short flight, and there's really nothing in our way. However, there are good reasons to fly at 5,500. The radios work better, the nav radios, so when we want to tune in a VOR to find out where we are, they just work better at the higher altitudes. But I think a more important thing is the safety factor. So let's just take a look at the POH here. So if we chose a 3,500 altitude, so that would be right here. Here we have height above the terrain. So if we are at 3,500 feet above the terrain and we come over here, we see that if we lose the engine, we can glide approximately 5 miles. What we do is we get our speed to 65 knots, that's our best glide, and now we can go 5 miles. If we're at 5,500 feet, right about here, we move over here, and it looks like we can go 8.5, maybe 9 miles. So what does that do for us? Well, there may be an airport in range at that altitude that we could make that we couldn't make at 3,500. So safety is a real factor also. So for my thinking, 5,500 is a really good altitude for this flight from Arbuckle down here to University UDU and starting our turn towards Sacramento Exec, and somewhere along the line here we are going to start our descent. So before we go any farther, I need to make a correction here because I made a mistake and have had to change the flight plan. And I'll show you that in a minute, but the reason being is that when you look at Calusa's takeoff minimums and departure procedures, under departure procedures it says for runway 31, climbing left turn direct to ILA VORTAC, that's the Williams VOR, before proceeding on course. For runway 13, a climbing right turn direct to the Williams VOR before proceeding on course. This means that we just can't fly direct to Calusa, although it looks like we probably could, but we need to go to the Williams VOR and then proceed. And since that's what the procedure calls for, that's what we're going to do. So since I have not shown the navigation log yet, now would be a good time to take a look at what we have done so far and see what it looks like on the real VFR navigation flight log. Well, we finally get to look at the navigation log, and I've gone ahead to save time here, and I have filled out all the information, all of our checkpoints, and I've put our pertinent information up here, the pressure altitude, the RPM for the engine, and our cruise altitude of 5,500. I've also put down our true course headings for each one of these legs. And so here we have Calusa, and our new true course is 195 to the Williams VORTAC. And you'll notice now also there's another checkpoint here, TOC. This is top of climb. So we want to know how long it's going to take for us to get to our 5,500 feet. And that becomes the TOC point. You'll also see down here a TOD, top of descent. At what point do we start our descent down to Sacramento Exec? And we'll go over these calculations a little later. So here's our new chart. So now let's take a look at the weather so we can start filling this navigation log out. All right, now it's time to take a look at the weather, and I wanted to match the real weather, but that's just not going to work out. So I have set the weather manually. So I'm going to go to flight configuration, weather customize, and I've added some wind layers here. So here is our 090 at 7. And over here we have the barometric pressure at sea level at 30.02 with the temperature at 20 C. And then we're going to look at winds aloft, and we're going to see 060 at 10 knots and 100 at 15 knots. So I'll show you how to do that online, just so you get an idea how it's done in the real world. And now we're going to go to www.aviationweather.gov. And here we can get all the weather, all kinds of interesting things. And what we're concerned about, I'm not going to go into all this detail here, but what we're concerned about is the winds aloft in our area. So what you do is you move the cursor around until you find the area you're in. We're over here on the west coast, so we're going to click on that. And now we have a bunch of locations listed here, and the different winds aloft at 3,000, 6,000, all the way up to 39,000. So this is where I got the weather for our flight off of this chart, and we'll be coming back to this a little later and go over that in more detail. So let's get back to the navigation log and start putting in some information. All right, I went ahead and I put the winds in here, 090 at 7, and we have 7 miles from Calusa to the Williams VORTAC. So now what we need to do is determine our true airspeed, and this is where the fun comes in. We get to use our pilot operating handbook and go to cruise performance, and this is where we're going to do our calculations. And you know, this is going to take some time, and I can't fit this all in this video here, so we're going to pick this up next time on determining our true airspeed. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this, please click the like button. If you would like to leave a comment or if you have a question, that would be great. So thanks again for watching, and God bless.